All right, Tara, thank you very much. And welcome, everybody. We're excited to have you on our webinar today. We have some great panelists, and our topic today is about using talent development to drive manager engagement. Just so I can introduce myself, my name is John Polis. I am the president and co-founder of DiscoverLink. Just to give you a little bit of background on DiscoverLink, we're the leading provider of e-learning solutions for the hospitality industry. And we're a little unique as compared to some of the other LMS providers out there. We do have a library of over 100 courses. We have a learning management platform. We do a lot of custom content development, and being in the business for 16 years, we have a lot of experience in helping organizations through their process. We are blessed to work with over 350 hospitality brands over the lifetime of our business. The true benefit of being able to work with all these brands is we get a lot of feedback and information from our customers that we then take and apply and put back into our products and offerings. So we are excited to work with so many folks, but yet it really is a group that helps us continue to define and build out products for the restaurant industry. Quickly, I'm going to introduce our panelists. There we go, sorry. First up, we have Jason Lechner from Pizza Ranch. Jason is the Director of Training and Development. He has over 9 years experience in corporate training departments, 10 years in restaurant management, leadership, and training experience. He's been a member of CHART for 7 years. Just to give you a little bit of background on Pizza Ranch, they are 210 units with over 250 million in sales across 14 Midwest states. They are 95% franchised. They've been a client of DiscoverLink for 6 years. They use our learning management system, DiscoverLink Talent. They use a lot of our library courses, and they're currently in the process of testing our mobile app. Next, we have John Aiken with Golden Corral. John is the Senior Director of Learning and Development. He has 20 years as an L&D department head. He's an 11-time award winner of for work in adult learning. He has a master's degree in adult education and distance learning. Just to give you a little background on Golden Corral, they're a 500-unit national buffet chain with over $2 billion in sales. They are 92% franchised. They are our longest standing customer. They've been a customer since 2003, so they've worked with us for over 16 years. They use our learning management system, DiscoverLink Talent. They use a lot of our content library. We've built a lot of custom courses for them, and they do use admin services from us. Last but not least, we have Chad Milovich. Chad is the Director of Training at Naf Naf Grill. He's been there for over 4 years now. Just to give you a little background on Naf Naf, they're a 38-unit Middle Eastern fast casual chain. They just sold their first franchisee this year, so currently all of their locations are corporately owned and moving into the franchise side. They've been with DiscoverLink for 4 years. They use DiscoverLink Talent, our LMS. They use our content library, and they are also currently testing our mobile app. So just to frame our conversation today, we reached out to our partners at TDN2K to get a little information from them that kind of wraps things around where management engagement is, some of the challenges that organizations are facing within 2019. And I don't think this will be any surprise. Obviously, finding, retaining, engaging management at your organizations is the challenge that we're all facing within 2019. As they've gone through their process, they've started to see some trends that are going on out there. 35% of limited service restaurants and 25% of full service restaurants are not fully staffed. So this is a new problem that has started to progress within our industry, and trying to find and retain people is becoming a larger problem. Conversely, from a management perspective, we're seeing that 52% of managers and 19% of general managers are not staffed within organizations. So this is definitely a trend that they're continuing to see to grow within the industry. And obviously, as we start to look at at GM engagement, management engagement, franchise engagement, we know that that really leads into, you know, it starts out with finding and retaining, but ultimately, if we can engage them, we can start to limit the need to find and retain. So the slide that I really think helps kick us off, our friends at TDN2K have a new product called GM Connect, and they're working with Gallup. And what they're doing now is they're starting to, through their consortium, they're starting to work with them to pull their general managers. And the reason why they're doing this is they realize that the general manager position is really a linchpin both in learning and performance at the unit level. And so engagement is obviously something that is something that needs to happen out within the restaurants. And as they've gone through this process, this is a fairly new product. The results are almost a little bit scary as they start to go through this. When you start to look at the numbers, 27% of managers or GMs are currently engaged. But when you look at the flip side of that, you got 55% that are not engaged, and you got 18% that are actively disengaged. And this should be framing what we're doing from a learning and development perspective. If you don't have access to these numbers, you should check with your HR department. If you're a TDN2K member, please reach out, see if they're using GM Connect. If they're not, it would be a good opportunity to push them to try to look at moving towards GM Connect, because as you get this information, it can help you as you start to continue to build out your learning and development programs. If you're not a TDN2K member, you should be talking to your HR department. It's a great consortium to get information that can always help us as learning and development people. So before I turn it over to the panel and ask them the first question, we are going to do a quick poll. And the poll is, select the statement that best describes manager engagement at your organization. A is, it rocks, they are totally tuned in and on fire. B, it's okay, but it could get better. C, not good at all, they are checked out half the time. Or D, what? Our managers need to be engaged to be effective. So if you can go ahead, I know that we'll turn on the poll. You can start to submit your answers, and we'll take a look to see what the results are. Really quickly, while we're going through the polling process, I know Tara spoke about this in the beginning. I'm going to be asking questions of our panelists and having them go through their responses to some of the challenges and questions that we've brought up. If you have any questions during the conversation, please feel free to go ahead and submit those questions through the question box. If there's some valid questions or information that will enhance what we're presenting, we'll be more than happy to share those questions. Anything else, we'll try to leave some time at the end to make sure we can answer any additional questions.
John, I don't know if you can see what I can see, but the poll has finished and the results are posted. Can you see that on your screen?
I cannot.
Okay, then I'm just going to read the results to you. It rocks. They are totally tuned in and on fire, 6%. It's okay, but could be better, 83%. Not good at all. They are checked out half the time, 12%. And the good news is, what? Our managers need to be engaged to be effective, 0%.
Awesome. So, and as we've gone out and we've talked to a lot of our customers, this is one of the challenges that we've talked, that has been discussed with us, and people are always looking for different ways to really elevate their management engagement as retention has continued to rise and turnover continues to rise. We know that this is a challenge, and I think with our three panelists today, I know that they don't have all the answers, but I think their organization are doing some things to really start to look at this as a way to help with those current scenarios within their buildings, and move that forward. So I'm going to move forward to the first question. And the first question is, what challenges do you see in terms of manager or franchisee engagement? And what are you doing from a training perspective to address that? So I'm going to turn it over, Jason, to you first.
Yeah, it's a great question, John. Thank you. You know, with Pizza Ranch, that question actually hits home to us. We identified retention and turnover as one of our 2 key goals for 2019 and beyond. It really is a difference maker for us. And so what we looked at was that engagement piece is huge. And so not only the industry data telling us some direction we could go in to help fix this, we actually took the steps to listen more actively to our franchise community, to the people in operations, the owners. What do they need? What are their people saying that they need to be more successful? And so a lot of the feedback we heard was talking directly to the point of, I need more hard skill training, you know, doing my job at a Pizza Ranch restaurant better, but also the soft skills or the power skills, as my friend Sarah from NRA would say, is the power skills. So teach me skills that help me deliver a better shift focus or pre-shift meeting. Teach me the skills to run better management meetings, or for our first time managers or our junior supervisors, teach me the skills on sales per labor hour. How is it calculated, and how can I actually effectively manage those different restaurant management disciplines better? And so listening more, giving us that feedback, we're taking an active strategic angle at producing better training earlier on in the career path of our teams to create better successes. And then that success, I think we all probably could agree, when people are successful and people are winning, they're going to be more engaged in what they're doing.
And I would say for us, oh, sorry, I jumped in. Go ahead, John.
That's okay. Go ahead. Go ahead, Chad.
For us, we're trying to figure out what is driving that lack of engagement. And I'm sure, like lots of your places, you know, we're struggling with retention, we're struggling with turnover, and managers kind of get caught in that cycle where they're having to retrain people. It's harder and harder for them to bring people in and really want to invest that time if they think they're not going to be there too long. So we're really focused in making that training easier for them. So smaller bite-sized pieces of training, things that are always on that employees can go and grab themselves. So there's a little less onus on the general manager to guide this training. We, especially as a fast casual, have smaller teams. So we may have a team of 20 people, and I know some of your concepts probably have staffs of 200. And so in a team that small, the general manager can delegate some of that training. So if we're putting our assistant managers, our shift leaders, and even our team trainers in charge of this training, that is at least taking some of the burden off them, and they're able to really train the team more effectively. Finally, that lack of engagement, we're also trying to figure out how to see it. And so, there's no replacement for just daily coaching, for doing those kinds of nuts and bolts things where you're correcting things, fixing people, helping people get better. And so when we see those managers kind of stop coaching or pulling back and just going through the motions, that's one of those places we really look to and say, all right, let's get in here and figure out how we can improve.
Right. And so a lot of what I'll say mirrors what the other two gentlemen said. And from our perspective, being 92% franchised, we work very collaboratively with our franchise advisory council. So we ask them to weigh in on any number of topics, including turnover, hiring the right people. How do we do that better? How do we identify the better people? How do we interview better for the skills that we need? So all of those issues and changes that come through also affect what we're doing in terms of training. So we're right now in the process of adding a large number of soft skills courses to our current offerings, to our current tactical offerings, to provide managers with personal and professional development to engage them more. And this provides them not only with skills and information that they can use at the workplace, but they can take into life with them as well. So hopefully by providing them this, we also retain them because we're providing them things that perhaps somebody else wouldn't. And so we want to make them better while they're good at running the business, the tactical operation of running our restaurants. We also want them to be more equipped to run the people part of the business better as well. And we think that by providing a fairly large number, we're looking at potentially 140 management courses, that may also help us reduce our turnover as well.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of organizations face out there is, do we want to invest in our management team? You know, we know where the turnover levels are right now, but I always say if you're not willing to invest, you're not going to be able to keep them at all, and you're just going to perpetuate the same problem. So finding that gap and being willing to invest in them will help them invest and engage in your organization. Really good. So let's move on to question 2. One of the ways to improve engagement is by providing opportunities for personal development and career growth. Can you describe what steps you are taking to manage talent development in your organization? So I'll turn it over to John first.
Thanks, John. So some of this will mirror what I just said, right? So, you know, we focus on improving their ability to run shifts, but we also now recognize that we need to focus on their leadership skills as well to engage coworkers, and for all intents and purposes, it's really easy to recognize when somebody is doing something wrong, but it takes effort and training and skills to also teach people how to recognize people when they're doing something right. And to say something about it, so that we're not just always correcting, but we're also complimenting at the same time. And so we also don't want to make assumptions that people who have been promoted throughout the system know all the skills they need to successfully run that restaurant, because many don't. And we have to provide that education. That's our responsibility as adult educators. And as I said previously, most do the tactile, the tactical things very well, but people development skills are just those, they're skills. So these are things that can be learned, and this helps us with the people dynamic of the business and engage our coworkers more fully. And as a result, then the expectation is that we'll reduce turnover. We also plan to provide leadership skills for those that even support our managers and our franchisees, like our DMs and our FBCs, and those in the support center where I am, so they can more fully engage and support our managers and franchisees and coworkers as well. So those are some of the approaches that we're taking. It's a full organizational focus, not just at the restaurant.
Chad?
So for us, a handful of things that we're doing. We did a big revamp of our MIT training, just focus on more bite-sized stuff. We've been talking over the past week amongst ourselves, and it sounds like everyone's MIT program is kind of always undergoing changes. And I think we're all of us are always trying to improve those things. One of the things we did with development goals is, you know, we're still setting kind of year-long development goals. You do that kind of yearly review, and I think different companies do it different ways of making sure that continues throughout the year. We're setting also really bite-sized goals. So they're little things that can be accomplished for shift leaders in the space of a week, giving better daily meetings or things like that. And their DMs are sort of able to communicate with them and check off a lot of goals in a relatively quick amount of time. So instead of waiting for a whole year and doing 3 or 4 SMART goals, these can be really quick, really tactical things. They can be big leadership topics. So, you know, a general manager developing people skills, developing meeting skills, things like that. The other thing is, because we're a younger concept, this kind of development's a little bit built in for us. In the past year, we rolled out an app. We started doing delivery. We put in a back of the house system. And so part of what we've been doing is really pushing that out to the system and talking about it as career development. So one of the nice things about being with a younger, smaller company is you get to build a lot of these things out. And so some of our managers are kind of along for that ride. And so as we're learning about stuff, they're learning about it too. And, you know, some people that's difficult for, it's difficult to learn like that. But a lot of our managers have really embraced that. And if we can think of these launches not as terrible, difficult things that we need to do, but instead ways for people to personally develop, that's been a nice way for us to bring all those management teams along.
Yeah, very nice. You know, one thing I would add on, and it's going to be similar to what Chad and John have shared from NAFNAF and from Golden Corral. I mean, we are actually not launching, but relaunching some improved MIT programming, as well as our entry-level team member skill position training just in about 12 days at our national conference. But that said, the question is, how do we manage talent development? We kind of looked at it and said, well, how can we manage it if we're not properly tracking it? And so with our rollout here in a few weeks, we're going to be utilizing the LMS, and we partner with DiscoverLink for our LMS, but we're going to utilize that at a much higher level to track the career pathing, to track the development path of our team members, our supervisors, and our managers, utilizing some of the different features like knowledge score, as well as prerequisite training to open up future training. So those are some of the things we'll be using. The other piece I wanted to mention that the other two guys didn't mention that helped us on this journey of managing talent development was we established something called a training advisory panel. And that was a recommendation from my friend Connie over at Culver's. And the idea behind the training advisory panel is similar to a franchise advisory council. These are folks out in the field, managers, owners, multi-unit managers, FBCs, and they're helping guide. They're really a guiding committee for everything we're going to do training and development related. And because sometimes what works here in the office doesn't really work well out in the field. And so we wanted to have a group of high-level performers, high-level achievers out in the field, helping us build our content so that it can be more successful, or at least have a more likelihood of being successful. And that was really important for us, and we're excited to here to roll these things out in the next couple weeks and the months moving forward.
That's awesome. That's some great insight, and we truly appreciate it. I think you guys are all coming at it from a different direction, but really moving towards the same goal. All right, let me move over to question 3. Can you share an initiative you have implemented or are planning to implement to improve engagement through learning and development? And I'll turn it over to Chad first.
So yeah, just mentioned the MIT training. So we've revamped that, and as Jason said, what's helped us a lot is running this stuff through the LMS so that we can really track it. Their managers can really track it. And again, I think as I talked in the beginning, it's ways about helping those managers spread out the training load across the entire team. So we rolled out last year a team trainer program. So just a way to kind of start someone on that management track. It's a person on our team who is a good trainer, charismatic, likes to train, all those kinds of things that we're looking for, but maybe not quite ready to be a shift leader. So it's a way to give that person some responsibility, and also a way for the manager to delegate the training through that. Before, we really had just really focused on our general managers to get a lot of that training done, and taking some of that burden off them has really helped. But we've struggled with this, I think, like everyone has. If those frontline employees aren't comfortable doing their jobs, if they're not fully trained, then it's always going to affect the entire team.
So I can speak up here too, is, like the other two gentlemen, it seems like this is revamp your MIT program year too, because we're in the process of doing the same thing, and that's based on a great deal of input. We did a survey out to our franchise restaurants, our franchisees, a number of GMs. We got about 225 responses back of things they would like to see change, what's working, what's not working. So that was the first step for us. So now we're right in the middle of redesigning that, and that's becoming, much to my pleasure, a much more blended learning solution where they're working in a training store. We have training stores that go through a certain process in order to become training stores. So not every store in our system can be a training store. They have to be accredited through us, and our MIT spend time in those training stores. So we're doing those things in MIT Tier 1 and MIT Tier 2. They're still in the training stores, but then we're adding a level of practice management in their home restaurant, because now we're taking them sort of out of the protected training environment in their training store, and we're putting them in a store. And if there's a need in that store where that MIT is going to be placed, it's probably because they're short-staffed, or they needed managers, there's some issues. So we're giving them 2 weeks of practice management now in their home store, and then that takes them through week 12, and then week 13, they're coming here to Raleigh for a week of classroom. So now they have all of their training behind them. They've got their practice management behind them. And now we have an opportunity to sit down with them and open a dialogue and say, what best practices did you learn? Are you using? What challenges are you facing? We can do things in a roundtable format, and we can complete other types of soft skills training, but also the important things on doing what we call food schools and doing a myriad of other things within that classroom environment to really engage them and bring that MIT process as a blended solution full circle.
Yeah, very nice, John. That's good. A couple of things I would add on, just again, echo the training advisory panel. Great recommendation. If you haven't established that in your organizations, get that set up. That's an initiative that is going to help engagement. When you're having people out there that are successful and passionate about training, develop, and design the programs, it's going to be more likely to increase engagement. A couple other things I would just add on to what John was mentioning. Making sure that the survey, well, I'm sure a lot of us are doing these surveys and polls, engagement surveys, those types of things. Our team asked a question that was really, really insightful. We identified that with our general managers, a lot of times that first year is the make it or break it year. And if they can get through that first year of being a general manager, they're with us for a long time. And the question we asked all of our current general managers, and even some who have left the company, was, when you think back to that first year of being a general manager, what were those stress points? What were the things that just frustrated? What was overwhelming? What was missing? What could have been better? And for some people, it's a little bit more difficult to go back 6-7 years. But for those who maybe have become a general manager just the last couple of years, they vividly remember the things that really pushed them on the brink and almost pushed them out. And so we can now identify where we need to apply some earlier training or some earlier teaching elements or exposure to eliminate those stress points across the system, which is pretty exciting and a very insightful question for us that we had answered.
So John, we do have a question from an audience member. The question is, what recommendation do you have for small independent operators without large staff and resources?
I'll take it. I'll take a stab at that. When I started, we had 13 stores, so and now we have around 40, and we're still pretty small. We're also we have our first franchisees, so we are handing off the work that we've done and the training programs and things like that we've handed off. So we're handing that off to them, and they're small businesses. They're going to have their first NAF and hopefully lots more after that. But it's hard to imagine doing it without an LMS. Just being able to keep track of everyone, it's intuitive, it's easy to run, it's easy to understand. And after that, I think it's really just making the tools as simple as possible. Depending on the kind of concept you're doing, you might want different kinds of training tools, but the simpler the better. As soon as you start, and just being able to keep track of who knows what, you'll have a leg up.
Yeah, and I would add to that, that great information, Chad, and add to that when you have an opportunity, if you don't have a large staff who can create things for you and continually update training interactions, whether you're doing them live or LMS wise, is to find off-the-shelf things that you can use that fit a need that you have. So there are literally tens of thousands of millions of off-the-shelf courses available out there on any number of thousands of topics. So anytime you can utilize something like that and even in cases you can license these things, you can make them your own. And a lot of these things can be done very inexpensively. DiscoverLink has a great off-the-shelf catalog for development and things like that, so which are very reasonable as well. So look for those types of things, and then find people within the organization who might be able to help you from a perspective if you don't have a staff because you're small, but who may have a passion for training and can deliver a message, and with some guidance, they could probably help you and be a go-to person as well.
Yeah, and John, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. I was going to say, whether you're a small organization that is it operating in one metropolitan area or you're scattered across, you have the next generation of training leaders in your organization. You have to find them, give them an opportunity. It could be a host, a bartender, it could be an up-and-coming manager, whether it's in-person small groups or just digital, electronic webinars. Start having them help build the content, problem solve, test things, and as you continue to grow, those people will be potentially your first hires to come onto your training team. But I would believe you've got the people resources somewhere within your organization. Go out there and find them, establish that advisory panel, so to speak, and have them help create it. If anything else, those folks are going to be so bought into you and engaged in the fact that you're having them help build it. For those people alone, you're going to create engagement and opportunity and growth.
Yeah, and I will add on to that with the smaller organizations. When we have conversations with them, it's focusing on being able to track what you're developing, whether it's still staying with paper-based materials and using validation tools like exams and checklists and workbooks to validate what's happening at the unit level. You now have a measurement in place, so as you continue to evolve your department, you can start to build an ROI case as to why you need to continue to evolve this out. So getting to that point within your organization, using a system to help you track what's happening at the unit level, you can better also understand what you're impacting and what you're not impacting and what you need to do, and working with operations from that perspective. So I think we have another question.
We have a follow-up question for Jason. What were some of the stress points you identified in the first year of a GM's tenure?
Oh, great question. So some people said things like, I would have liked more time spent on understanding the sub measurements within the P&L. Ultimately, they had to respond to their franchise business owner on the bottom line. But how can I positively impact, for instance, sales per labor hour? Or how could I positively impact, my smallwares? And what steps and tools, because the numbers on the P&L, that's a lag metric. But what are the lead metrics, the lead things I can do ahead of time as a general manager to really achieve or meet or exceed the expectations of my owner and then feel successful? And that way, that pressure of, I'm not doing a great job, I'm not doing a great job, I'm missing this number, I'm missing that number, that starts to eliminate itself, and you've got more momentum and confidence going in that first year than out. So we had a lot of feedback regarding more teaching on the subcategories within the P&L. We didn't get a lot of feedback of people saying, teach me to make pizzas better, or to bring people through the POS counter more quickly. It was a lot of those, give me additional opportunities to learn the different more leadership management skills, and not so much the doing the figure eights. And so those for us anyways were some of the more thematic responses to those questions. And as John Aiken mentioned, we're blessed here at Pizza Ranch to have partnered with DiscoverLink, and I'm sure if you are, there's a great library of soft skill, power skill type of e-learning modules, quizzes, exams, content that is available to you that you can use. And those courses alone are sometimes the first time that our entry-level managers are actually going through that type of development, which is cool to provide that for them.
That's a great point.
I think we have
another question. We'll go ahead and raise this one, and then we'll move on after this. So how is leadership development built into the MIT programs to ensure it's not just tactical or operational?
Great question. So I can take some of that. So it's built in through, we have very structured manuals that they follow, and a syllabus for each week of the MIT program. And while there are in that and each week tactical things to do, there are weeks where there are also management courses to do. There's time when they're spent working with the general manager on what do we do to hire, what do we do to interview, how do we review applications, so how do we find people as well, so more the getting the people in and retaining them kind of a thing. And then also doing employee evaluations and learning how to do employee evaluations and talk to people. And then there's a myriad of other courses that they can take from the soft skills perspective for things like, and some of this starts at our hourly crew trainer level and up on giving feedback, giving feedback to peers, supervising people. So all these things are a part of it, and a number of those things we in-license, a lot of those we use from DiscoverLink as well. So we just have very specific time points where these things happen. And then in the new design, the redo of our MIT program, when we have classroom for a week, we will devote part of that time to those soft skills as well. I have to be honest, I don't like the word soft skills, and I think the industry has to find a new word for that than soft skills, because I think that leadership development and managing people is one of the hardest things you can ever do in your career. So I think that, you know, incorporating those into an interactive format in our classroom and being open and talking about the things that you do and doing scenario-based learning is a way to overcome some of that as well. And we also do that throughout their 12 weeks.
I think one of the tricky parts is it's very hard to know about the quality of the training that's happening when you're not there every day. So, you know, same thing. We have programs. There's stuff that they go through, there's practice they do. One of the main things I do when I go in or that I want to check on is just to see the reps, to see, you know, there's a place for them to keep track of this stuff. I want to see how many meetings they've done. I want to see how many onboardings they've done. I want to see how many inventories they've done, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes I feel like even if the quality isn't as high as it could be in the training, which can be hard to know, we have better trainers and worse trainers. If someone has 20 reps in, 40 reps in, then I at least know they're getting some facility with that stuff.
Yeah, I agree with both these guys. And John, I think I've been really holding on to the power skills. And when I heard Sarah Anderson talk about that at a previous chart conference, I mean, really, we're all talking about people being one of the, you know, it's a battle for people to a certain degree, and keeping people engaged, you know, things like manager meetings, things like giving proper performance management sessions. Those aren't soft skills. That's the difference between whether or not you keep people or you lose people. Those are powerful skills that we have to continue to look to develop. And, you know, we do provide some servant leadership training courses when folks come to our 4-day leadership training, Foundations of Pizza Ranch down here in Orange City, Iowa. And we partner with a consultant to help provide that for them. And we're continuing to look to find ways, as you mentioned, John, scenario-based leadership training that's built into our new MIT program, where, I mean, you know, you don't always have a person get burned by, you know, scalding hot pizza cheese. That doesn't always happen during training. So we've got scenario-based kind of modules throughout the MIT training saying, okay, this happened. Somebody's got scalding hot cheese, burn the skin off of their arm. What are you going to do as the manager? What could you have done to prevent this? Who do you have to communicate with? And moving forward, what can be done? And so getting them to think about that earlier on in the game versus they get out of MIT, it happens, go figure, 2 weeks later. And because it ends up being not a great situation, they get frustrated and get disengaged and you know, quit, or even worse, they get actively disengaged and stay. And so we want to get ahead of that a little bit by offering some of those scenarios.
Perfect. All right, we're gonna move on to our next question. And I know that we've kind of touched on some of this, but I really want to move more towards the cultural side of this. So how do you leverage the training department or the LMS as a part of your franchisee location communication efforts? And what role does it play in carrying through the culture of your brand?
So I'll start. So in any heavily franchised organization, as you would probably assume, maintaining a culture is a constant effort, right? So because within our culture, with as many franchisees as we have, we're going to have any number of subcultures that are happening. From our perspective, though, we've established what we call our 5 fundamentals of excellence. We also have what we call our 10 to Win program, and another program on elevating the experience, and a number of other programs. And those things require constant reinforcement to ensure we continue to always elevate the experience for our guests, and that our franchisees and our company restaurants are engaged in that process and have the belief that we need to do that as well. And in our organization, that starts with our CEO. He is the owner of the culture, as is the leadership team, and they have a laser focus on the culture and recognize the importance that a good culture plays in the success of our business or any business. In many ways, our Franchise Advisory Council is an excellent conduit for driving culture as well, because we're engaging with them and then they're engaging back out with the franchise community. And so, you know, we're reaching a point where everyone in the franchise community, no matter how big or small, is starting to feel heard. And I think that's important to your culture. But again, it's a constant evolution, and it requires a whole lot more listening and a whole lot less talking.
For us, it's integrating that the MIT process and the NSO process. So when thinking about building culture right from the start, when we have those new store openings, we want to make sure that there's just we inject the culture at that point. Part of it is getting our managers through that MIT process where they have a ton of culture and we're teaching them all about that stuff, and then leveraging them as trainers at the new store openings. So they're kind of fresh out of training, or you know they're backfilled or something, but it's having those ambassadors. You know, our managers are much. We used to do it with hourly trainees, and it was a little bit hard sometimes to get that culture across because they'd be coming from all over the place. But those assistant managers, general managers, using them as trainers for these openings allows them to really be ambassadors for the cultures. You know, that they embody it and they live it every day. And so when we get those new stores started off, they have it there and they're kind of ready to go.
Yeah, and we've got some of those similarities. You know, I mentioned earlier, we have a 4-day classroom down here in Orange City, Iowa. It's called the Foundations of Pizza Ranch, and ultimately they're going to learn hard skills. They're going to learn, you know, P&L, dive in, scheduling, profitability, running lean. They also learn servant leadership. But the key of it, the reason it's called Foundations of Pizza Ranch, is they're going to be trained at a pretty deep level on our vision, our mission, our key business drivers, and what we call the Pizza Ranch way, which is how we go about our business. Our mission, of course, is to provide every guest with a legendary experience. So we use the language that's pretty good, but is that legendary? To keep that culture alive. And for any new franchisee, we have it in our FDD, because as John said, it's tough to sometimes protect the culture as you're growing through franchising system. But in the FDD, the managers and owners have to come through the Foundations of Pizza Ranch. They do have to come down here to Orange City, Iowa and experience it. And not only that, but meet and build relationships with the entire restaurant support center that's here to support them as they grow the brand. And we are in a growth, we're a growth concept, and we grow intelligently, and we do it slow growth, which is good, but we are expanding the geographical map. And in order for us to do that and still protect the brand, we have the foundations there. I am excited. John mentioned in the introductions that we're testing the mobile app that Discover Link is offering, and there's some good messaging features in there that may help us to keep that alive. We believe recognition of the culture being lived out is important. We have a Pizza Ranch Serves blog that has daily blog posts. People can, you know, we do a lot of great mission work basically by selling coffee. So we're heavily involved in the communities. That's all part of our culture. And you couldn't even get to the point of doing a discovery day at Pizza Ranch without understanding what the culture is and your expectations of living it out as a franchisee and as a manager.
All right, so I have one more question, and then we'll open it up to the group. I know that we've had some questions come in, but my final question for the panel is, what was the most difficult obstacle to get your GMs and franchisees to invest in their people, and how did you overcome it?
I can take that one first, if that's okay. I think the biggest obstacle was, you know, we've got over 200 restaurants, and we have a lot of people that are very proud of the business that they have, and they desired more effective training. They wanted it to be nimble. They wanted it to be, you know, flexible, and they can massage it. Yet we have to keep a framework in place That way the brand can be protected and the brand can grow. And all of it's safe to keep us out of a joint employer situation. And so the biggest difficulty was probably finding that right balance between building a strong framework that helps protect the brand and build it, but also making sure it's nimble and flexible enough where every pizza ranch is a little bit different. We have pizza ranch restaurants in towns of 4,000 people, and then we've got pizza ranch restaurants right in the middle of Minneapolis. And so they have different needs for how they train their people. And so the biggest challenge probably was to create that framework that has enough freedom for them to complete it and be successful, but do it at the pace or in the structure that works best for them in their individual locations. As most of you know on this webinar, not an easy task. It's a great challenge, but that's probably the most difficult thing. And by leveraging the training advisory panel and having people on that panel that are from all the different walks of life, so to speak, of the different restaurant situations, we believe we built a pretty great structure for the team member training and the MIT training, and that'll help us to overcome that obstacle.
Yeah, I think, and to chime in here, I think, when we think about the most difficult obstacle from our perspective, I think we're still trying to overcome it. And in that sense, it's because we're trying to fundamentally change the mindset from training being a cost to training being an investment, that we need to invest in people and their development so that when we find somebody who has a passion for the restaurant industry, we get them early and we keep them long. So you do that by investing. We all know this isn't easy. Labor costs are going up. I was in a strategic planning meeting this morning. The new figure is there are 921,000 hospitality jobs currently available. So somebody is always trying to take your people away from you. So it is those, and what we hear is that all things being equal, people want to stay when they feel like they're being invested in, they're learning something, they're making a decent wage, but that they want to develop and they want to grow within an organization. So, and we start this conversation early as well about what we expect. So when potential franchisees express an interest in becoming a franchisee, we discuss with them very early on what the training requirements are going to be, what their investment is going to be for opening their restaurant, as well as what their ongoing costs are going to be, so that there aren't any surprises. So, and it comes down to, if we invest in our people, and going back to what I said earlier, if we get them when they're passionate and when they're at the beginning, and we keep them, the ROI it far outweighs anything else that we could do, because we're keeping them, because turnover costs a lot more than retention.
Yeah, I would add, we have some fairly intensive processes. So we're baking pitas fresh every day. We're building shawarmas, these towers of meat that are tricky to build and they take a lot of training. So if our managers don't invest in those tasks, the wheels come off pretty quickly, and then the manager's back there building the shawarma or making the pitas and things like that. So there's some stuff built in to really want to help these people. The other thing that we lean on pretty heavily is we're a Middle Eastern concept, and our food is pretty unfamiliar to a lot of people still. People generally know hummus, but they may not know falafel, they may not know baba ganoush. And so we really train our employees, one of our core values, to really be guides for our guests. And we try and extend that to our new hires as well. The way that we talk to our managers about it is those new hires are really more like guests than they are like employees. And if you bring them along and guide them and treat them well, they are going to stick around. They're looking for the same thing that a guest is looking for. Do I like this place? Is it clean? Does it seem like everyone knows what they're going on? So if you can invest that time, bring them along, be their guide, they're going to be that much more likely to stick around, and then the manager is not going to be the one making the pitas in the morning.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and as we sit there and we start to look at some of our customers, this is the area where, if you look at training departments, a lot of investment in hourly employee coming on, a lot of investment in MIT, but really getting your GMs to understand that they need to invest in their people in order to start to impact a lot of things that are happening at the unit level. And I think you guys shared a lot of thoughts on that, and I think it is, one of the things that we've learned is people don't leave jobs, they leave other people or managers. And if those managers aren't investing in them, they're probably not going to be around very long. So it's definitely one of those things that GMs need to continue to find ways to invest in their people or develop their people and give them roles and experiences. And I know one of the things that we're starting to see out there is a lot of people are doing performance reviews, and they might happen once a year or every 6 months. Well, with turnover rates where they are, it's almost, you know, you need to do performance check-ins. I know Golden Corral does stay interviews, things that will constantly engage the management team with the hourly employees to ensure that they're understanding and they're getting the perception that they're being invested in as well. All right, so that is it for my questions. As we discussed earlier, if there's any questions that we have for the panelists, we'd love to go ahead and take those at this time.
Okay, John, we do have a question. It is, how do you prove the value of training to franchisees and operators?
Great question. Jason, Chad?
I think one of the baseline things, and then I'll hand it off to Chad, and I know, John, you've got some good calculations as well. But when you look at any type of TDN 2K, Gallup, whoever's providing the data as far as the cost of turnover, it's staggeringly high than the cost of training. And so starting there, first and foremost, I mean, we just did a little bit of an internal poll. Part of our engagement study was looking at a pizza ranch, the cost of turnover for a general manager. It's not just the training and all that. We had one of our franchisees, the number was something like $110,000 was basically lost in the first year of that general manager being gone. So there's TDN 2K data, there's Gallup, there's all that, there's chart, but then there's what our own people are saying. This costs me when I lose a really talented general manager. So just cut that in half and say it's $50,000. Well, if you can just very easily say the cost of training a general manager for 6 weeks in a certified training restaurant with materials, salary, and everything else is $15,000, that's a small percentage of the cost of losing somebody. So I think maybe start there. I'll turn over to Chad and John.
The financial cost, but then also the morale cost. I think we've all been in stores where two people didn't show up for the shift, and you can see it on everyone's face. And you're there to do a job, but instead you're rolling up your sleeves and kind of pitching in. So I think there's that connection to be made. That a happy team is one that kind of supports each other. They're invested in each other. We're really upfront with it. We've just signed on our first franchisees, so it was a little theoretical for me, but we've been incredibly upfront about how much training it takes, especially for some of those harder positions that I've mentioned, that you can't just bring someone in and 2 shifts later have them be ready on some of this stuff. So we've been incredible upfront, and hopefully being that upfront is going to pay off for us.
Yeah, I agree. Training is a process. Depending on what position you're in, depends on how long you need to train, but people have to be willing to let that investment in their time happen. And we do it incrementally using micro learning, so that people are learning in bursts of 2, 3, 4, 5 minute segments, so that at any given time, if there's a need for that person from a labor perspective to be back on the floor, they're only within 4 or 5 minutes away from being able to be back there if they need to be. And you want to reduce the turnover as well, because if your managers are spending all of their time interviewing and hiring people, that's taking away from the time that they have to run your restaurant and to engage with their employees who are already there and who really need their attention.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have one more question before we have to wrap things up. I know we're coming up on the top of the hour.
Yep. So yes, one last question here, and if there's any others that come in afterwards, we'll certainly be happy to respond to those offline. Yeah. But the last question is, in thinking about communication, do managers ever request learning and development for language skills to address language barriers? Curious if that ever comes up.
Yeah, so from our perspective, I'm not going to have a real eloquent answer, but we do everything in both English and Spanish. Until recently, we only did back of house things in English and Spanish because there was an expectation that if you were at the line taking money, or if you were a server, that you needed to speak English. But we made the determination after some discussion was that people may need to speak English for their job, but they learn better in their native tongue. So we've now started, our policy now is we create all training in both English and Spanish, and those are the two languages we need the most within our restaurants. So I can't speak for, we're not doing other languages beyond that, but that's not to say that as time goes by, that we won't have to think about that as well. But we just automatically do that now as a matter of process.
I would say inherently, we use video for a lot of our training, short videos for our frontline and backline folks. You know, this would be hard with managers, but we have a handful of bakers whose English is very good, and so having that stuff on video, even though we don't translate the audio, just being able to see step by step, having things really spelled out, that even if there is a language barrier, the path is there. You have a tool that you can look at and follow and figure it out.
Yeah, I agree with that, Chad. I think using video, using images, using charts that are just a number or something. We haven't heard a lot of feedback or requests from our field regarding having other languages involved. What I can say is, regardless of that, it will become part of our strategic learning and development plan, because there again, providing people the ability even to understand baseline second or third languages, that's just part of that engagement piece of adding development and adding skills that's going to help them be a better person when they leave Pizza Ranch down the road, or if they stay. And so I think providing different language opportunities for training and for working is not only if I can't speak the language, but also it's that ongoing learning and development. That's a skill that people would appreciate learning. But I would go back with Chad too and lean on those videos, charts, images, yeah.
Yeah,
and I would go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, I'll add one more thing too that is a best practice for us. So when we create whatever training we create in-house, it's also created with closed captioning. In an organization with 35,000 plus employees, we do have several who are deaf or hearing impaired, and so we try to meet their need also by having things closed captioned so that they're able to follow along as the videos play, and also be able to get the training that everybody else is getting.
Yeah, and I think this kind of comes back full circle with what we talked about in the beginning, which is there's a shortage of employees. So we need to look in a lot of different places that we've never looked before. There's people that we can bring into our culture and help them through the process, and they might have challenges, whether it's special needs, whether it's language. So as learning and development people, we need to learn. We need to understand that we need to continue to evolve what we're doing, because the challenge isn't going to get any better. It's going to continue to grow, and we're going to have to find ways to make sure that we're able to recruit from every different place. So I want to thank our panelists. I know in the spirit of chart, they were willing to share today, and we truly appreciate them taking the time to share what they're doing within their organizations. Really quickly, if there's any additional questions, feel free to send them over. We will try to get them answered and get back to you. But we'd like to thank everybody for their time today, and hopefully there was some nuggets that you can take away from this and use within your organization. So thank you very much to the panelists, and thank you for everybody for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.